All right, well, let's call the Regional Corporate Services Committee meeting to order. Good morning. First item, please.
First item is approval of the agenda, addenda, and late items, Mr. Chair.
So moved.
Thank you. Moved by Director Facio, seconded by Director Ross. And any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, if any, and the item carries. Next item.
Item 3.1 are the draft Regional and Corporate Services Committee meeting minutes of March the 10th, 2020.
Thank you. Mover and a seconder.
Moved.
It's moved by Director Robb and seconded by Director Popov. Discussion. I don't see any. All in favor? And opposed, if any, the item carries. Next item.
Next is 4.1. We have the quarterly update for 2020. I'll just draw your attention to this document. As you all know, I was officially appointed on April the 1st, so this is possibly a little bit later than we would normally present such a document, but it is my intention that this will become a regular feature for the committee and board, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have, and we will certainly improve this as we go along and expand it. Just to keep both you and the community informed of all of the various projects that are underway here at the FVRD.
Fantastic, and this is just an information item, but if there are questions.
I have a question, not a question, but a comment.
Director Alexis.
Hi, good morning, everybody. Just wanted to say what a great document it is. And I think that if this comes out quarterly, this is an absolutely fabulous piece to use as your gauge as we move forward. So I was really, really happy to see that, and just a well done document. So kudos to staff. Thank you so much.
Director Blue.
Thank you. I just wanted to echo those comments as well, and particularly because I'm new, a lot of this information is new, so I found it really, really helpful to get the perspective and the context, and it's a great document, and clearly a lot of great initiatives underway. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other comments or questions? Don't see any. So again, just express my appreciation. I think there are often so many projects that are underway that it's easy to lose track of what's happening and where. I saw some feedback from Director Davidson yesterday about just providing some ongoing tracking and tying some of our quarterly projects in with the strategic projects and work plans and that kind of thing. And you know, I think to have been able to pull this off in such short order and considering the circumstances, I mean, this is a fantastic document, and it's going to be very useful for us all. So thank you, Ms. Kinnaman, and one of many new great initiatives I know you're going to bring. So thank you very much. Next item, please.
Sure. Next item is 5.1.1. We have the 2020 gatehouse operations at Island 22 and Dewdney Regional Parks.
Thank you. So board's pleasure. Moved by Director Stobart and seconded by Director Robb. And discussion on this. I don't see any. Maybe just a quick commentary in that, you know, as we begin to, I guess, ramp up to bringing some of the places that we have currently closed back into operation. I know I've watched some correspondence from Director Engar and some of his community members, and I had a whole bunch of correspondence over the weekend, this past weekend, where there's quite a large number of people who perhaps didn't hear as clearly or perhaps heard something different from the Chief Medical Officer than I did, because everybody just flocked to the hills and flocked to the river and flocked all over the place. And I think I saw Director Engar was at 250 cars, upwards of 250 cars parked all up your valley, and people, well, I'm not 100% sure if they were respecting the physical distancing that we expect them to. But you know, if that was any indication of what's to come on the long weekend, I think we may have some challenges here in the region. It's hard for me to believe that, I just speak from a Chilliwack context, I guess, that, you know, we went this many weeks where people were really respecting the rules, I think, and then we had this weekend, because there was an awful lot of people, cars it looked like, coming in from out of town. And I know that speaks against the spirit of what the Premier said and what the medical health officer said about, you know, go out, recreate, enjoy the nice weather, but do it in your own town. Now's not the time to leave and start coming to other places. And so I think that's a little bit of a challenge, and we've got a bit of a challenge ahead of us here.
Just the same kind of comment. I think every motorbike that was available out of Vancouver was in Agassiz and Harrison on the weekend. And they were not very respectful of any rules or regulations.
Yeah, Director Enger, I saw you unmute there as well.
Yes, thanks, Chair. It was quite exceptional in the 40 years I've lived out here. I've never seen so many people in the valley. Cars, I didn't actually count numbers, but that 250 number that I heard from somewhere as well, that was just one section of the valley. So it was well over that. And you can't always tell how respectful people are being going down the river, because they sort of disappear into the wilderness. But it's a challenge for sure, and I think you're totally spot on that the medical officer's direction of sort of expanding our bubbles one person at a time has quickly gone out the window, and it's Yahoo! We're here and we want to party. So yeah, it'll be a challenge going forward. I totally get that people have been cooped up and they need to have some exercise and get out in a beautiful environment and shake some of the cobwebs off, but it will be a challenge going forward.
Director Fascio, how are things up in Harrison?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It was Saturday was a real bad day, especially with the boating public and the trailers. At the moment, that will be opened up on Friday. Our boat launch parking has been closed, as has the boat launch, except for locals, but of course nobody takes notice of that. Up to that point, our signage, I believe, has worked very well for the community, but of course, as the other director said, with the sunshine coming out and people being cooped up for several weeks, they just came out in hordes, like Sylvia said, motorbikes, and it was quite a thing to watch out there on the weekend, especially more people on Sunday were out there on the beaches, not shoulder to shoulder, because the roads, the front to Harrison are still closed off, but they'll be opening up on Friday, and we'll have to take it from there. We all have a challenge in this, but we have to, I believe, start taking into account the many businesses that may not open again and are suffering, and hopefully they'll be able to try and recoup something from what's left of the spring and summer. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Were there any other comments?
I'd like to.
Director Popo. Yeah.
Thank you. Just yeah, I was inundated with a bunch of emails as well, and I guess the most disturbing one for me is kids were jumping over the fenced off skateboard parks that we have installed, and it's you know, for me it's a parent education piece, if you will. Like, if you see your kid walking out of the house with the skateboard, where do you think they're going to go? But we had some, you know, some other plans to get a bit more aggressive, but just, you know, people have to use common sense, just like what Mr. Fascio said, and it's you know, it's troubling, but it's I understand people are cooped up, but if we don't stay on course, we're going to be in trouble.
Yeah, I know we had reports in Chilliwack. We had kind of phased open up some of the dog parks, and we had people ripping the ripping down some of the protective tape off of the benches and stuff, and just it's unfortunate, but Ms. Kinnaman, I know we've got an opportunity to speak with the province. I think a number of us will be able to be on a call this week prior to the long weekend, and I think just that messaging needs to come out from the Fraser Valley. We've done our very best here as a region to flatten this curve, to bend this curve. We understand that people are very excited to get out, but certainly now is not the time to start traveling across regions. There's lots of parks in Metro Vancouver. There's lots of places in other parts in your own town and in your own place where you live where you can get out. It's not the time to come in and disregard the chief medical health officer. So I will be sharing some of that this week in my correspondence and my conversation. I encourage you all to do the same.
And Mr. Chair, if I may, I would just like to take an opportunity to thank the CAOs of all of our member municipalities. We have been in close contact throughout the entire crisis, but most recently as we all develop our own restart plans and trying to seek as much alignment as possible to reduce any message confusion. Of course, recognizing that each individual municipality in each area is a little bit unique, but I think that will help us achieve that measured and cautious approach, balancing the risks and the rewards.
Thank you. And Director Blue, you had your hand up.
Yeah, thanks. Just adding to that, I think that, my observation is that resort communities or places like Squamish and Whistler and Bowen and other places have been really clear, and, Tofino and others, don't come here, stay away. But some of them are quite a distance away, and people are not, I don't think they're thinking about the Fraser Valley communities in quite the same way and quite that same messaging, because they can just hop in their car and easily drive to be at any one of our locations. And I think that just starting to include these locations or these favored spots or whatever it is that's the right thing that where we're seeing the most issues would be really helpful, because it's the same thing. It's like, we can't support these issues, or we can't support, if there's health issues that arise, or it's just the congestion that's there. And it's really worrisome when you see people out and they're just absolutely ignoring any kind of social distancing, and, runners and cyclists like blasting past, almost knocking people over as they're making their way down the paths is really unfortunate. And if we're going to recover well, I think that everyone is in agreement that the confidence that's there about being safe is really, really important. And so just, making sure that people understand that, that we need to be safe in our communities as well, I think is really helpful. And it's good to see the coordinated effort. And I appreciate Chair Lum, your strongly bringing this message forward and including. I think it's really, really critical.
Thank you. And I don't see any other indications, so I will call the question. All in favor? Opposed, if any? The item carries. Next item.
Next is 5.1.2. We have the Wild Safe BC 2020 program changes. There's a motion for your consideration, and staff are available to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you. It's moved by Director Facio and seconded by Director Blue. And discussion. Director Blue.
Thank you. Just a question on the section entitled cost. The last paragraph says staff recommend declining the $6,000 and preserving the 2020 $15,000. And I'm just wondering what preserving that means.
Ms. Kinnaman.
Stacey Barker is the director of that department. She's on the line. Perhaps she could answer that question.
Ms. Barker. There she is.
Thank you. It's possible that the board could redirect the $15,000 to some other initiative should they choose. Or perhaps they could have some savings going into 2021 where it could be used as well, possibly to this program. Hopefully the province would increase the amount that they're dedicating to it to match what we have done in the past.
Okay, thank you. So then I'm wondering if it needs to be more specific about what that means, like where we would hold it or in what account or how we would actually, you know, depending on when everything resumes and we might be looking at it, if it's just sufficient to say preserve it or if it needs to be allocated somewhere to specifically preserve it for that purpose, or if the accounting is such that it's fine as is.
Ms. Barker, if we were to just add an addenda to the motion where we said to reserve in a reserve for the WildSafe BC, would that be appropriate?
Mr. Chair, could we perhaps have Christy Hodson, who is from our finance department? Maybe she would be best suited to answer questions about the budget and how to earmark things.
Absolutely.
So what we could do is we could tag it in the surplus account for future use. We could leave it as is for the rest of the year, and if something comes up, if a new program comes to light through COVID, we could also use those funds towards something new. It would have to stay within the parks budget. We don't have to make any amendments for that money. If we don't use it by the end of the year, then it can sit in a surplus account for future use.
Perfect.
I have a question, Chair Lum.
Director Alexis.
Thank you. Just a question with respect to messaging moving forward. So primarily, as I understand it, this was more of an educational service to the public, and wondering how we're going to make sure that people do stay safe and act responsibly with the wildlife in our community, just regarding messaging and communication moving forward. Thank you.
Ms. Kinnaman, is that back to Ms. Barker?
I think back to Ms. Barker for sure.
So I'd actually like to have Christina Vegdeveen answer this question. We've been having some discussions about that ourselves in terms of how to continue the communication. Ms. Vegdeveen, can you answer that question in terms of what the public does, in terms of if they have questions, and what will be the procedure going forward if this wildlife coordinator is not active?
Ms. Vegdeveen.
Morning, thank you. Can you hear me okay?
We can.
Okay, perfect, thank you. So I think there's lots of opportunity for continued information sharing around wildlife safety. Unfortunately, with the COVID-19 situation, the door-to-door and the typical conversations in group settings is just not realistic. However, one of the big pieces is certainly reporting wildlife interface and what that looks like. And our intention in the Parks Department would be looking at some ways that we could broaden that messaging of how to report, when to report, why it's good to report, and have more of sort of updates and education for the communities in terms of what they can do and what that best looks like and why these things are important. So we would look at putting together some sort of informational sessions, packages in a streamlined manner to be able to support needs in different communities.
Great, thank you. Director Engar?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That would be through you to Ms. Vegdeveen. That would be fantastic. As you know, I've been putting out our sort of door knockers on the various animals and how the public should interact with them if they are encountering bear population or coyote or anything in particular. So anything that I could send around to my community would be fantastic. And I'll be doing some of that regardless. So I look forward to seeing what we can put together. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And any other comments or questions? I don't see any. I mean, certainly, Ms. Kinnaman, I understand the recommendation on this, and I will be supporting it because it feels as if perhaps the province should step in a little bit more. We would like them to step in a little bit more. What I don't want is this to be a reflection, any reflection on how I feel about, or how the board feels about the importance of the program. And the presentation that was just done, I know was very informative, and I thought the presenter did a fantastic job. This, you know, hopefully this is, you know, this is a one-year thing where we get through COVID and then we move ahead, and that person can, you know, do the job the way that it needs to be done. So not a reflection on that great presentation and the importance of the program, the importance of WildSafe BC, but you know, perhaps the provincial government will be able to step in and provide the support that this program really needs for it to be successful and sustainable. Certainly the regional district doesn't have those same kind of levers and financial freedom to pull to have excess funds to be able to put into a program to keep it going like this, but it's not a reflection of how important this program is.
Absolutely, Mr. Chair. The FERD has long been a supporter of this program, and I think that just due to the nature of the situation, that the traditional methods, and quite frankly, the most effective methods of this program, which involves very direct contact with the population, it's a matter of the situation of 2020.
Great.
I may, Mr. Chair.
Director Engar, yeah.
I just want to follow up. I'm wondering, in the case of the presenter, I take those sentiments to heart. I think that's an excellent thing that should be communicated. That we do definitely support the program from even if we can't do it this year. But I'm wondering if that particular individual qualifies for CERB. If contractors in those instances are just out on the edge of the limb and with no support, or where do things like that stand? I haven't followed it closely enough.
Yeah, I think Director Engar, it would probably very much be based on that individual's financial picture, right? So it's hard to say whether or not she qualified. I certainly hope that she, you know, well, I hope that she didn't need to take advantage of her CERB. I hope that she's being able to keep some employment or find some alternative employment, but it would depend on her own financial picture, I think.
Understood. I think your sentiments and those, if we could somehow communicate that to whomever is involved in the presentation, that would be a good thing. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Director Engar. Okay, don't see any other comments. I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed, if any? The item carries. And thank you, staff, for all of the answers. Next item.
Next item is 5.1.3. It is an information item, COVID-19 impacts on regional and community parks and trails. Staff are available to answer any questions, but we thought that the committee might like an update on specifically all of the statistics and the details, operational details that we're experiencing in our parks program.
Thank you, and again, not dissimilar from many of our municipalities and some of the challenges that we are going to face as we move through the COVID situation. I think we're going to see, again, a decline in revenues and probably some limited operations as we move forward. Any questions from any of the directors? See Director Facio?
Yes, if I may ask, Mr. Chairman, the staff through you, is there any anticipation date when the East sector would open up?
I think I heard any anticipation date on East Sector opening?
Yes.
Yep. Ms. Kinnaman or Ms. Vectaveen?
Since we've got Ms. Vectaveen on the line, we might as well have her answer.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, so staff have been working very closely with other partners, municipal partners, provincial partners, to try to understand the picture of who's opening up when. Alignment is really critical, but also managing sort of the needs of our individual spaces. Right now, what we're looking at is being in alignment with the May the 14th opening, in terms of the parks and spaces where we're able to do so safely. That would be including our areas like the East Sector lands, Elk Mountain, and Thompson Regional Park. Cascade Falls, right now we strongly feel like this one should remain closed, and especially through the long weekend, given the nature of people tend to really go there and gather. And it seems to be a real hotbed for that type of activity. We are working on signage plans, which include helping keep our parks open, staying physically distant, those types of things. We were able to reopen the dog park on Saturday, which has gone over well, but playgrounds and washrooms at this point are remaining closed until we can work out the best way to move forward in terms of making sure that they're safe and maintained and usable. At the same time, if there is something, we are monitoring where what we can, and if there is an area that's a problem, the recommendation would be to move forward with a potential closure to help stay in alignment. So that's kind of the thinking of where we're going with this.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Bugveen. Director Angar, and then Director Blue, it looks like you have a question as well. Yep, Director Angar, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just a little challenged to see how we can open the Thompson Park without washrooms. I recently received a photo of an improvised washroom up the valley, and it had, just unbelievable. I won't even try and describe it.
Please don't.
But it really triggered my mind when I received the email this morning that Thompson Park was going to open, but the washrooms won't. We could have a big problem there. So if you could expand on that, I appreciate it. Ms. Bugveen, through you, Chair.
Thank you. Yeah, it's one of those things that's absolutely a challenge. Not all park spaces have washrooms, and the expectation to be use your washroom at home before you come and when you leave. And assuming people are staying closer to home, that should be feasible. But that's not necessarily the reality, and there are likely washroom facilities that will need to be open quicker than others. The backside of that is the protective equipment review requirements for staff and cleaning frequencies that needs to make sure that that's all in alignment before we can go ahead and do that. So we're working on that. The sooner we can get them open in a safe manner, the better it is for everybody, because I do believe, as you're noting, people will come because they want to come and they want to get outside. So the quicker we can do that in a safe manner, probably the better it will be for everybody.
Follow up, if I may.
Go ahead.
Well, do you anticipate then Thompson Park being open for the long weekend without washrooms?
My hope would be that we would get those washrooms open in conjunction with it. We just have a little bit more work to do on that framework.
Very, very good. I appreciate you proceeding that way. And my recommendation would be, if we can't get the washrooms open, we don't open the park. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Angar. I've got Director Blue and then Director Dickey.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair Lum. I found the report very informative, and it's amazing, how many things are impacted by this COVID. And just anecdotally, I was talking yesterday to our Parks GM in Abbotsford, because we just live close to Mill Lake, and we noticed an issue that was there and related to vandalism at a new facility that was there. But what we noted was that washrooms in particular have been a challenge, and any that have been open are subject to vandalism. So, aside from the PPE and, staff safety and all that, at least one washroom was completely dismantled. And so there's all kinds of things that you would hope better of people than what they're seeing happen. But they've actually got some assistance being pulled in from Abbey PD now and some other things to try and minimize some of the vandalism in some of our parks and on the trails. I guess people just have way too much time on their hands, and rather than just going out and enjoying, have been actively destructive and vandalizing. So it's really disappointing to hear that. But, the one comment or question I guess I had with noting with the budget that there was going to be a request for the temporary park assistance. Given the breadth of the area and how much area there is to cover and all the rest of it, I support obviously going ahead and getting whatever relief we can and whatever assistance. But I'm just wondering how effective additional workers can be given the enormous workload and the situation that we're currently in.
Ms. Vegtveen, the small but mighty park force that we have at the FPRD.
Yeah, it's absolutely a challenge. Thank you. However, we're finding that certainly more boots on the ground, for lack of a better term, in peak areas. We're able to determine through our stats programs where people are going, what times of day they're going, and correlate that. And I also identify that with problem areas. For example, a really good reason to reopen dog parks is because we're having a lot of extra problems with dogs off leash. And so being able to be out there and educate people in terms of why dogs should be on leash and those sorts of things, that would be really, really helpful thing to do. So we would likely utilize those staff in key hotspot areas where we know that education would be the most effective way to go about it. Is it enough? No, it never is enough. But we try to make it work with what we have and try to respond as best we can to the needs that are out there in the communities.
Thank you. I think too, just hearing you say that is really great, because having the ability to make data-informed decisions is really helpful when you know where the hotspots are and where to deploy staff. I think it'd be way less demotivating for staff as well, that they're feeling that they're actually doing something that's making a difference. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Dickey, and then Director Alexis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just in regards to the washroom issue, I just thought I'd point out the Sham Lake Wetlands Regional Park has been open other than the Easter long weekend without washroom facilities. Park's getting very heavy usage. Somehow it seems to be functioning without the washrooms being open. So just for others who are concerned about that in their own parks, I thought I would mention that.
Thank you, Director Dickey. Director Alexis.
Of course, we have to chime in with respect to washrooms. We have absolutely increased use of Fraser River Heritage Park, and we did have to put a porta potty actually in place, keep the bathrooms closed, but it's basically, you use it on your own volition, and we're not necessarily maintaining other than just having it, flushed and all of that. But anyways, that seemed to put some, it was a bit better measure than nothing, because we were having some issues. And I agree with you, Director Blue, we've also seen vandalism on the increase, but that is, I think, right across British Columbia. I've looked at the crime stats, and mischief is, I think, way up there. It's so sad, commentary on society. But I just want to comment with respect to the playground opening. I know that likely some of our elementary schools who have playgrounds will be partially opening or opening to a third or 2/3 of the school population. And it was a real challenge when we were entertaining closure of playgrounds, and we weren't necessarily aligned with what the school district was doing. So it's just a note to please coordinate the opening with your local elementary schools so that we're all doing the same thing, because some will be open, some schools may not. I don't know yet how that's going to look, but just a note to keep that in the back of your mind, the coordination with the school districts. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Alexis. Any other comments or questions? I don't see any. We'll move to the next item.
Next item is 5.2.1. We have the FVRD Transit Services COVID-19 response. there's a motion for your consideration, and Ms. Stewart is on the line if you have any questions.
Thank you. Mover and a seconder. It's moved by Director Facio and seconded by Director Alexis. And discussion or questions? Don't see any. I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed if any. Item carries. Next item.
Moving down to reports by directors, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And directors, now would be the time. Anyone have a report? Nice to see all of your smiling faces. Don't see any reports other than, I guess, from myself. Just again, really going to bring that message forward to any of the provincial folks that they get an opportunity to speak to this week. I think we've got an update with Minister Trevena as well. So just underscoring the fact that, you know, we have far fewer resources here at the region and in our municipalities than the provincial government does. So as we begin to restart, consideration must be made for the regional districts and what consequences, unintended or otherwise, will happen when the economy starts to start up and when people start moving around the province again. So we want to be cautious, we want to be careful, and we also want to continue to be kind with our neighbors. And but it's a challenge when we suffer some of the irresponsible behavior that's happening across the region. I know Director Blue, you mentioned a couple of vandalism. There was I know we saw some vandalism up at the Chilliwack, in the Chilliwack River Valley, up in the gatehouse at Chilliwack Lake as well. So some of it is that the irresponsible folks who aren't obeying the Chief Medical Health Officer are ending up coming into these places, and the peer pressure from the folks that are people who just want to get out and enjoy and recreate, who are staying home and aren't there to kind of have more eyes on in the parks and in our areas, to keep those kind of people who aren't acting responsibly in line and in check. But this is a huge challenge, and we will get through it. So thank you all for all the work that you're all doing in each of your respective areas. And we'll move to the next item.
Now we move to item 9, which is the public portion of the meeting, public question period for items relevant to the agenda. As you all know, the public was encouraged to email submissions to us in advance of this meeting. And as well, we have our phone line open at 604-702-5000. And we can just pause here for a few minutes while the broadcast catches up and see if we have any callers that come in this morning that have any questions relevant to today's Regional and Corporate Services Committee agenda, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Kinnaman. And as we wait for to find out if we have any public participation, I just want to extend or use this opportunity to thank all of the staff that are on the line. And I know that a tremendous amount of work goes into putting these agendas together. And it's been very heartening to see how much work gets done behind the scenes and through challenging and difficult situations that we've been in, and people working from home, but we continue to move projects forward, and I think that's a testament to all the hard work from Ms. Kinnaman, your team, and many of them are on the line right now. I don't get to see their smiling faces. I just get to see the black boxes. But anyways, to all the black boxes out there, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I know that they all really appreciate hearing that, and I too have just been consistently heartened by the hard work and dedication of all of our staff. That willingness to go the extra mile is the norm at the Fraser Valley Regional District, but then particularly in these trying times. They just never cease to amaze me. So with that, I don't see Ms. Riley running with any calls from the public. So I would suggest, Mr. Chair, that we look for a resolution to close the meeting.
Thank you. That's moved by Director Fascio and seconded by Director Popov. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Item carries.